friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm just shooting an impromptu video today because I found I still had a beef roast in the freezer from way back when we bought a whole side of beef, of grass-fed beef that was local. And you know, we still have elk meat and deer meat to work through, that 2 different deer in fact that Patrick got. And so I'm trying to get this beef used up. Thankfully, it's wrapped well and it freezes well and it's still really good. So I was really thrilled though to find a roast. I love doing roasts, especially when it comes to red meat, whether it be a grass-fed beef or wild-caught elk and venison. These are my favorite things to do. And so I was going to show you how I do this. So this is basically a combination video because I'm going to show you how I do this off-grid, because every time I do this kind of thing, it's always off-grid, whether it be in the summertime in our solar oven or on the wood stove like at this time of the year. There are some slight differences when doing a roast or baking a chicken in a solar oven than doing it on top of a wood stove. I don't have a wood cook oven. I have a wood stove with a flat top. And I have several videos about that and how I use it. I'll go ahead and link down below to one that I did a general video about, you know, how I use just a regular wood stove that's made for heating the house, but it has a nice flat top on it with lots of cooking space. So anyway, I'm going to show you specifically how I do the roast, but I'm also going to be talking about why I like to do a roast even one this size, even though there's just 2 of us here. But first, let's go ahead and get this roast in my pot and then I can get it cooking. So the first thing obviously I got to do, it's actually not quite fully thawed, but that's okay. That's the great thing about doing this way, is it doesn't have to be. Now some people might like to sear their meat a little bit for flavor and stuff. I've never bothered with that, and I always love how our beef roasts turn out. Or elk or venison, whichever kind of roast it is. This is just super duper simple. Now since I'm doing this on the wood stove and not in the solar oven, I'm going to be adding a little bit of water to the bottom of this. That's going to keep it from drying out. So maybe about a cup of water. But then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add one of my homemade wines to this. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do the apple wine or if I want to use the blackberry wine. Typically people think red wines when it comes to red meats and white wines when it comes to white meats. But I'm thinking in this case, I'm thinking the apple's going to be really good. So that's the one I'm going to go ahead and use. So I have a video, I have a whole series on how to make homemade wine out of your own homegrown fruit juices, whatever they are, and I will link to that playlist down below. So I'm just pouring a little bit over that. Actually, let's do a little bit more. And what I'm actually going to do before I put this on the wood stove is I'm going to go ahead and let it just sit and marinate in that wine for a little bit. And I'll go ahead and also throw some herbs on top. So I've got to sprinkle a little bit of basil on there. So when I'm doing roasts, even chickens, this is the same kind of spices and herbs I like to use. A little bit of thyme. So we got some homegrown basil, some homegrown thyme, and some homegrown sage. 3 of my favorite herbs to use on something like this when I'm not doing an Italian or a Mexican dish. Then I add different or more other herbs to it as well. And this is something that's always standard. Put in on some granulated onion and also about that same amount, which might be up to a tablespoon, of granulated garlic. And that's okay if some of that gets down in that liquid, because you can use that liquid for other things. And then salt of any kind. I like to sprinkle with my homemade seasoned salt, which I also have a video on that I will link to in the description box down below. Don't forget to hit show more. And I'll be putting a lot of videos down there, so be watching, because I'm going to be talking about a bunch of other things. So just sprinkle that kind of liberally over there. And then I tend to go back and forth between using red pepper or black pepper when it comes to any of this kind of stuff. I think today, and I do this sometimes too, I'm going to do a little bit of both. Okay, and now I'm just going to let that roast sit. I still got to peel my potatoes, so these are homegrown potatoes, and I'm not putting a lot in here because, for one, it's just the 2 of us, and as far as eating this as a roast, that's only going to be for one night. And so anyway, I've still got, here it is, the day that I'm shooting this is January 20th. I still have potatoes that we grew in summer of 2019 that I'm working through. Still have quite a bit. I'm thinking that we're going to have enough potatoes to get us clear through till the time that I'm ready to harvest again. Maybe. We'll see. So anyway, I'm going to be peeling these and adding them in here. There's just enough space in there I can squeeze some potatoes in alongside there. And then on the side for a vegetable, I'm going to go ahead and open up one of my jars of my homegrown and home canned green beans from 2019, and I'll just heat those up in a separate pan, add little spices to it, garlic, onion, and all that, and then serve that along with that. So then what I do is I'm just going to put some pictures right here. I put this pan on top of a cast iron grill because we collect those for the purpose of using on our wood stove. And what that does is it keeps it elevated just enough where it's not going to burn on the bottom, but it allows the roast to bake. And I also set it way back, as you can see in this picture right here. And so it sits back there on the wood stove, but also between the brick and the stovepipe coming out, so it's got a little more heat coming at it from all the way around, so it's roasting quite nicely in there like that. I'll go ahead and also put a picture right here of how the roast looks when it's all done with the potatoes. The thing about doing a roast on a wood stove, to me, it's just like using a slow cooker, but I get to do it without having to use any electricity at all. Now I do have a slow cooker, and if I am going to use that, it's only going to be in the summertime when we have plenty of solar power coming in and no wood heat. But if it's a sunny day and I still have a, you know, which can even in like in spring, we can have some really nice days, but can still be chilly enough that we have a fire going in the wood stove. We might be getting plenty of solar power. I still will use the wood stove if I've got a fire going, even though I could use it. My solar power, I'm not putting wear and tear on those electrical items by using the wood stove. And then if it's a nice enough day and warm enough, that I go ahead and use the solar oven, and that saves in that way. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to talk about, so this dinner right here, this is all being put together like almost all of my dinners from entirely things I already have in food storage. Things that I've grown myself, like the herbs and the potatoes. If this was one of our elk or venison roasts, then it would be something that we harvested on our own, but at least this meat was local, but it was also in our food storage. We've actually had this roast in the freezer for several years. And so, yes, this is food storage item. I do also can meat, and I talk about that a lot in other videos. But I do like having a fresh roast like this in order to bake up. And so we like to eat on it like this the first night. A good, tender, flavorful roast to have for one night. Sometimes if there's a lot of meat like I have right here, maybe I'll heat it up again the next night, add some more vegetables and potatoes, and then we'll eat on it again like that. But the things I really like to do, I've got a whole list of things, and I'll be putting pictures here too of the things that I have pictures of. I don't have pictures of all these things, but I also have video recipes to quite a few of the things that I'm going to be mentioning here, and all of those recipes I will link down below in the description box. So just hit the show more, look for the thing that says video links, and then you'll see the whole list of the videos right down below if you want to see how I make these things. One of the things I really like to make when it comes to leftover red meat from a roast, whether it be elk, venison, or beef, and that is enchiladas. I love making enchiladas, and one of our favorite things to have. I make my own tortillas to go in that as well, and so it's all from food storage and homemade. That's one of the things I do plan on doing this week with this leftover roast. Another thing I like to make is a beef and bean burrito. It could be venison or elk. Again, with some homemade tortillas to roll them up in. Another favorite of ours would be the pot pie. I do have a video, I believe, specifically on making a venison pot pie with a leftover venison roast. And oh, before I forget, I also have a whole playlist on ways to make the most of your different leftovers. And it is, for those of you who are vegans out there, I apologize, because this is all focusing on leftover meats. So whether it be fish, chicken, turkey, and beef, venison, or elk, those kind of meats there. Okay, and then one obvious thing that a lot of you probably would have already thought of would be stew. cut up whatever meat's left over, throw in some carrots, potatoes, beans, peas, corn, whatever it is you like in your stews, and just cook it up, and you've got a nice, wonderful stew. A little bit of barley. Oh, that's so good in there. Usually when I do a stew, that's going to be with whatever's left over after I make some of these other meals first, because usually there's going to be a little bit of liquid left in there. If there's a bone in the roast, then it will be kind of a gelatinous, so I'll have some good bone broth in there. Then that's what's going to be used in the soup or stew when I go to make it. Another one is, though I usually use ground beef in this, making a tamale pie from a leftover roast is also a very good way to do that. Now, usually what I do when I do a fried rice, that's going to be with leftover chicken or fish. Those are my two favorite leftover meats to use when making a fried rice. But I have made a beef fried rice before, and it is quite good. And then speaking of your more Asian foods, making a spring roll. I like using a red meat when making a spring roll. Usually I'm going to use a ground beef in that, but again, this is something just like with the enchiladas and the burritos. You could also use your leftover roast, just cut it up really small, and that's going to be really tasty in your spring rolls. Now, I don't think I have a video recipe on a whole, you know, all the ingredients I use in a spring roll, but I do have a video recipe on how I make the skins for the spring roll. So just, you know, the breading part itself. It's actually pretty easy. It's a very simple recipe, so you can check that out. Don't forget to hit show more down below. Okay, and then another thing you might want to consider is making a teriyaki beef. Now, a lot of these recipes that I'm listing off are usually going to start with a raw meat, but I've done these things using leftover roast instead of using a raw meat because I've already got the meat, it's already cooked. It makes it that much quicker to whip up. And one of those other meals is Mongolian beef, which I do have a video recipe on that. And I love Mongolian beef. And I think in that particular recipe I was just using whatever freeze-dried and dehydrated things I have on hand, but it's also really good to use with fresh peppers and onions when you're thinking of a Mongolian beef, or even broccoli. Another really good one is stroganoff, a beef stroganoff. Sorry, I don't have a video recipe on that one. And another one I'm still got to do a video on is the Serbian moussaka. It's at least something similar to a Serbian moussaka. And again, that's something I would often use a ground beef in, but anything you can use ground beef in, using your leftover roast, that you just cut it up in smaller little pieces to make it, you know, seem more like a ground beef. Sometimes it will taste even better than using your ground beef. There, and now that's just a few ideas of some different meals that you can make from your leftover. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be making all of these meals out of this one roast, but I can make up to 3 or 4 different meals that I have listed here from just this one roast, from whatever's left over after tonight's dinner. And so it's just one way that we can take something like this and really stretch it out and get the biggest bang for our buck on that. This was a multifaceted thing, just kind of talk about how I prepare things off grid to show how easy it is. It's just as easy as using a slow cooker. And I forgot to say, I leave that on there. I just put it on there early, let it bake all day. You know, obviously you got to come check it every now and then, but it works very similar to a slow cooker and it makes it nice and tender. Same thing with the solar oven. And then the other thing was to show food storage items, and also showing you how to make the most out of your roast by sharing with you all these different ideas. So again, don't forget to check down below for the various video recipes that I will have linked down there if you're interested in doing any of this stuff. Oh yeah, and the homemade wine as well. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you'll maybe learn something new, or it gave you some fresh ideas of what you can do with some of your leftover meat. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.